Hi there, this is James, and we're going to be doing another little presentation for Tone 2 Resurrectional for Galician Chant, and I'm doing Tone 2 because next week is going to be Tone 2, so I thought I'd get ahead of the curve here. So Tone 2 Resurrectional is probably one of the simplest tones that we have, but that also makes it the most butchered in certain ways. Like just a note from last week, I touched on how these tones and melodies evolve, like original troparia or hymnography and various other things, stuff like that. Before they changed into the music we know now, they would have had like a particular melody for particular words. It would have been like a song that we typically know. It's when people start singing the melody to a different set of words. Like if you translate Greek to Slavonic is pretty close, but it's not necessarily going to be exact in where the syllables fall. And so that little detail is going to change the music over time. It's inevitable. So there's no person who would have thought, hey, I want to create a new song and I'm going to write it like this. This is a product of stuff changing over time. It's not a product of one person's individual personal creativity. That's not how these things work. So I'm just bearing that in mind. These are not like, Amazing Grace. Someone went out and said, hey, I'm going to write this song with these words and these notes, and it's going to be really pretty. It might have been like that once upon a time, but it isn't now. Like, nobody would write this. So just bearing that in mind. Same idea with, like, the Psalms that we often sing. Like, I've read some stuff on scholars talking about the Psalms in the Bible, and that the Jews would have had particular songs for each of the Psalms, but we've since lost that stuff. Maybe they've rediscovered some of them now. I don't know. I don't think so. But like there are things are usually melodic in a beat 2-3-4 beat 2-3-4 kind of way, and this is not. So I'm going to just remind people of that continually, because just because I'm teaching you one variant of the tone doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with how your particular church is doing it. Don't take this instruction as I'm teaching you how to do my way of the tones. I need to teach you my way because it's the only way I know, but I'm trying to teach you some of the principles of how things work, which is why I've gone to the trouble of making all these little parentheses and marks and other things on these little tone sheets, so you can get the idea. Okay, yeah, like held notes, there should be an emphasis. High notes, there should be an emphasis. Certain notes can be split up and stuff like that. That way, whatever variant you're using, you can be able to sketch it on a piece of paper and figure out, okay, here's where these syllable emphases need to go and stuff like that. And also just another disclaimer, I'm not going to teach how to sing or how to read notes here. Not really. Like, maybe I can get into that at some point, but that's not my purpose here. I'm sort of making certain assumptions that you already either know a tone generally or know how to read music generally or stuff like that. There are other people who do, have courses and stuff like that on YouTube that can teach you how to deal with musical things, but at least for everyone's ease and comfort, I've put everything in the key of G. So everything is going to have the sharp on the F here. So no matter what, there will be a certain consistency between all the tones. It's not always like that in various books that you look at. So don't let that throw you off if you go to a book that's in B flat major instead. Stuff like that. Anyway, Tone 2 Resurrectional. It is exactly the same phrase every single time. The end really isn't actually different. Da 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 da. The only difference between the one and end here is that I'm just making this last note here from a half note into a whole note, just because it's nice to like mark last notes as a note that should be held longer. But otherwise, there is only one phrase essentially to tone to resurrectional. That's it. If you get the phrase da 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 da, you're done. And there's nothing else. However, I mentioned that this can be butchered very easily, so don't look at this. I'm going to do a magic trick right now. Watch the magic trick. 3, 2, 1. Delete button. There it goes. Okay. So here is a phrase taken out of the anthology. Another disclaimer. Even though I am using the anthology to pull some of my stuff out, obviously I know a lot of people don't have one. That's why I'm making the thing I just deleted available on these, because that's not pulled from the anthology. That is my taking this format of the music and putting the notes in that so you can see how the skeleton is working with the notes. But like the main practice here is understanding how the skeleton works and applying it to texts that don't already have the music. Like that's the point of this, for you to see how it works, because if you have the music in front of you, you don't really need to think about it apart from like knowing the notes in the first place, but that's not hard if you have the music in front of you. The real challenge is knowing how to sing it when you don't have the music in front of you. So I'll do a pause for 5 seconds, let you sing through this if you don't know it already. Hopefully you don't. That makes the point easier to make. But sing through that as I pause for 5 seconds. You pause the video, just try that. Alright, so I'm going to sing it through. I'm using the anthology, and here's what it looks like. When you went out to death, O life immortal, you struck Hades dead with the blazing light of your divinity. When you raised the dead from the nether world, all the powers of heaven cried out, O giver of life, Christ our God, glory be to you. Now, would you have necessarily got that interpretation from looking at this? I don't know. But here's what it looks like as written in the anthology. This is one way you could sing it. This parenthetical note is right here is never used, but I assure you it is in other places. Da, 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 da. Hang on. Is there one on the next page here by any chance? For as the mother of life she was transferred to life. Okay, yeah, so there is an example. You can find them easy enough. But, okay, so this parenthetical note is skipped on the first phrase. When you went down to death, O life immortal. So when you went down to death, O life immortal. Got emphasis here and emphasis here. When you went down to death, O life immortal. So that's precisely where they're supposed to be. You struck Hades dead with the blazing light of your divinity. You struck Hades dead with the blazing light of your divinity. So you struck Hades dead. So this is like, this first emphasis is sort of like a sub-emphasis. You struck Hades dead with the blazing light of your divinity. Yeah, that works. When you raised the dead from the netherworld. 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 Yeah, the real emphasis is here. The higher note should take the stronger emphasis. So when you raise the dead. So this is almost like a sub-emphasis. So you're putting when you raised the dead up here from the netherworld. So neth is where this emphasis goes on this note. Here, all the powers of heaven cried out. So all the power. You don't say all the powers of heaven cried out. You do say all the powers of heaven cried out. So all kind of has your sub-emphasis here. That's why these parenthetical notes here are skipped. All the powers of heaven cried out. Now, interestingly enough, I said you don't say all the powers of heaven cried out. So this actually, if you're reading it, doesn't really make any sense. How would I sing it if I wanted to emphasize heaven? Well, the real problem is that the that the phrase isn't long enough to accommodate all the notes. But all the powers of heaven cried out. All the powers of heaven cried out. That's about the only way you could emphasize the word heaven on this note. To make that work, but of course heaven is still being emphasized, just way over here at the end of the phrase, and you notice this little hat thing, which I use to indicate that note can be split into 2 quarter notes. That's what's happening here. Heaven cried out. So instead this is becoming 2 black notes, like here. Dead, so powers of heaven cried out, like that. And so at the end, again, we're skipping this black note here. O giver of life, Christ our God, glory be to you. And so this is where you can really tell that the English translation is not being matched to the notes, because here we got not only one parenthetical note being used, but 3, giver of life, Christ our God. So in order to put, O giver of life, Christ our God, we want the emphasis for the high note here. And that means we have almost pretty much another stretchy note right here to accommodate all these extra syllables, because giver of life, Christ our God, puts us 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 5 syllables between emphases, and so that all squashes in here, and it makes it sound nasty. Oh, giver of life, Christ our God, glory be. So it just sounds nasty. Like, again, don't sing it differently than the text you have in front of you. You can't do anything about it. I'm pointing out, if it sounds nasty, or if you're tripping over yourself, or if your tongue can't handle it, this is why. It's because these notes are not intended to accommodate these kinds of words. Finally, in the very first video, like the introduction to everything, I discussed an interesting thing like this. When you got again, there's 5 syllables, and the very first and the very last one seem to be where the emphasis are. Glory be to you. So glory, so glory be to you. First and fifth. So you could sing these last 3 notes various ways. Glory be to you, and emphasize the word be, but that sounds weird. Glory be to you makes this note very short. Da 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 da. Or glory be to you. That sounds clean but lopsided. None of these work. But if you're just looking at this last phrase without music in front of you, one person might do this way, another person might put the U here and drag it all along. The point is, as always, be aware of what you're about to sing and what your strategy is with dealing with first, fifth syllable emphases at the end of a phrase, because that's always going to come and haunt you sooner or later. But here's one that I did not write to music, but this is the Kontakion. And I'll let you sing that quickly. I'll take 5 seconds off for you to pause. Okay, and now I'll sing it. You rose from the tomb, O Almighty Savior, and Hades, seeing this wonder, was stricken with fear, and the dead arose. Creation saw and rejoices with you, and Adam exalts, and the world, my Savior, sings your praises forever. So, interesting what's going on here. And Hades seeing this wonder. And Hades seeing this wonder. So now we have 1, 2, 3, 4 notes instead of what's here is 2. So suddenly there's added 3 more parenthetical notes. And so, not impossibly, someone might sing, and Hades seeing this wonder was stricken with fear, and the dead arose. It's emphasizing the wrong syllable, but it's less choppy, because this emphasis shouldn't really be way over here in order to accommodate the music. And this creation saw and rejoices with you. Creation saw and rejoices with you, and rejoices with you, and Adam exalts. I was actually looking at the notes as I was singing that, I still got it wrong, because it's just so unnatural to sing this phrase to the notes that are given. It doesn't work. Again, this is what we have to deal with in the English translation. It's not you or your inexperience with the music. It's that this is actually hard. With the translations we have, this is actually hard. And so you need to know that it's not your fault if you get it wrong, or tripping over one another. So the more you know how this works nicely, which is our next example, the more you can deal with the hard examples when they come. So this is what the constructor, that is the nice version that it's supposed to look like, would look like if you had a translation that was cleanly made for the music. So no parenthetical notes, got rid of those. Da 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 da. I've tied these two notes together. You'll see what that means in the beginning. When there's an emphasis on the stretchy note, it means the very first syllable of the stretchy note is what's emphasized. So here's two examples I have. I think one of them is imperfect, but that's okay. It's a rather big example. One is pulled from Wednesday and one is pulled from Tuesday evening of Vespers, I believe. So I took a translation, I reconfigured it to fit the bill. So I'll take 5 and let you try this first one. Okay, and now I'll sing it. O all glorious Virgin Theotokos, by the cross of your Son the power of Hades has crumbled. He has raised us from death and granted us life eternal. And the garden of paradise, that original bliss, has once again been reopened. In thanksgiving we glorify the love and power of the Master, for alone he is merciful and almighty. So as you can see, even my work is not perfect. I'm tripping over myself, but it's at least the end of the phrase, the beginning of the phrase, at the very least, are clear cut. Like nobody's wondering, where nobody's gonna. I don't think anyone's gonna think, for alone he is merciful and almighty. No, like nobody's gonna do that. Here's a second one. I'll take 5, and now I'll sing it. O you fountain of mercy, make us worthy of compassion. Theotokos, take pity on a sinful people. Show your manifest power, for in you we place our expectation. We cry out, I rejoice as one 'tis Gabriel, the commander of the angels. So, these two give you generally a good feel for what the tone sounds like, repeating the same phrase over and over again, so you can actually try singing this and get a feel for it. And then once you're used to how it should work, then try other tone Tuesday, or even try, look up at something in, look up something in tone 1 Resurrectional and sing it to tone 2 instead. Use the knowledge that you have where the emphases are supposed to be and apply it to any text or the child safety warning in your car about children not needing to sit unattended in the back seat without a chair, child chair. That's one of the ways I learned to learn the tones. Yes, I am being serious. You can apply this to anything and practice it. Even have conversations if you're so inclined. It's wacky and awkward, but it works to get the feel for the tone and see how your brain is puzzling through just how English grammar works. That's what it really comes down to. And funny thing right here, I slipped up and my tongue was all tongue-tied. The notes are all in the right place, but did Gabriel, tongue my tongue needs to be at the front and then immediately move out of the way. And so this is actually hard to say. That has nothing to do with the notes. It happens to do with the choice of letters. Is it phonemes? Is that the word? The word I'm looking for to describe why some things can be hard to pronounce, even though it has nothing to do with the phraseology per se. Anyway, that's our little introduction to Tone 2 Resurrectional, so you can see the structure. As usual, I'm going to post the documents used in this video in the description so you can download them, see them. Please comment, let me know what in here is useful. The more information I have, the more I can tailor this to what people want to learn, especially for the harder tones like Tone 3, which is a brutal nightmare. And we'll see why once we get there. Thank you for watching and have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.